Hey everyone, this is Chris Murdock, Recruiting Connections with me. Hope you are all having a phenomenal week. I would like to introduce you to Kat Kibben. Kat and I met through the speaker circuit years and years and years ago. I'm not going to put a number on it, but it's been a while, been a minute. But Kat, it's so great to see you. Catch everyone up on what you're doing, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, so my name is Kat Kibben. I run a company called 3 Ears Media, and we are job post writing experts. I spent since we've known each other, being a writer and a marketer in the recruiting world, really understanding both sides of the equation and stories that motivate them. And finally, I hit a wall where I realized that hiring is always hard. But the reason it's hard is because there are a million variables we don't control. The one you can is how you ask, how you speak to people, and that's what we're the best at.
That's awesome. Here at IQTP, we focus on the engagement. Finding people is great, but you got to get them engaged. You got to understand where, you got to meet them where they are, the candidates are. And if people are unresponsive, it's probably because your messaging is off, or the timing's off, or what have you. But you can always assume that the messaging needs to be improved. And so we actually had, you'll get a kick out of this. There was a role that we were recruiting, a member of the team was recruiting on in New York. And this one person called out, had been unresponsive, but called out the Spice Girls, being like a huge fan of the Spice Girls. And Lauren wrote in the subject line, "Tell me what you want, what you really, really want." And then in the body of the text, she wrote, do you want to have a conversation? And people have asked me to sing it more than recite it. Not doing that. And the person responded, like, not interested in the role, but that was awesome. I'm going to stay in touch with you. It's amazing how important the writing is these days.
Yeah. And what you just highlighted is such an important part, is that so often recruiters go, I'm not a writer. And really what we end up teaching people to do is to be a better listener, to be a better connector, to be a better empathetic person who's trying to connect with another person. And I had a similar story where I was reading the code and I said, did you write the code of love? And all you had to do was scan it to know. I'm not a coder by trade, right? But to see those notes, that's how we build connection. And that's how I would build connection with someone like you. If I noticed the drink that you're having or a t-shirt you're wearing, why can't that translate to a digital format? And most of the time, there's just this block between our brain and our hands that makes us think that we can't just be people.
Yeah. And the thing is, and one of the things about that, the empathy has actually been a consistent theme through the 5 podcasts we've released to date. I've got a couple more that we've already recorded, but empathy keeps coming up. These days, empathy is so important, that connection. We've got some people here at IQTP that are so empathetic, they're mind readers, and it's creepy. But we have others that that are not as on the empathy scale. They're still on the empathy spectrum, but it's, as long as you understand that you have to put yourself in their shoes, and you try to understand that if they're an engineer, they're getting thousands of messages. Just assume that they're getting thousands of inappropriate messages that just aren't right. They're getting spammed. And so how do you separate yourself from all these other recruiters that are spamming your candidate pool?
Exactly.
And you do it with your words.
Yep, exactly. Because that's the part we can't automate. We think about how we move faster and smarter. There's not a lot of data on empathy. We collect that data over our lifetime, and we're able to apply that in real cases. There's no spreadsheet to figure out empathy yet. And so we're just creating our job security. That's all.
Well, it's funny. We had a client, I can't say the name of the client, but it was a very large hedge fund. And they essentially paid us to argue with them for the first 6 months of the engagement. All we did was argue about trying to take the gut work out of recruiting. You can't take the gut out. You can't take the person away. There still has to be that personal connection. There still has to be that personal understanding, that empathy. but you can get smarter on how you engage, what indicators and keywords you use to make it more likely that the person's going to be a culture fit. But ultimately, you still have to have that gut, that interaction, because they're not being recruited by a company. They're being recruited by the people that work for that company.
Exactly. And at the core of recruiting, we sell change. And no one wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to change my whole life today. Screw that job. I'm out. I'm getting me a new one, right? We do not willingly march into change unless something is really wrong in our life. And we're willing to risk a lot to change that pain, that whatever it is that's grinding our gears and making it really hard for us to wake up in the morning with any kind of joy. That's when we change. And that is like a deep emotional moment that you're not going to get by writing we have an incredible opportunity to be a senior technical software developer with blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. The grinding of my gears, it brought up images of Family Guy. Didn't he have that grind my gears? But the thing about the change in people's lives, I have to explain when we first start training people, we explain you're about to take a journey with someone through some, like the 5 biggest biggest stressful periods in people's lives are, career change, job change, moving, and there's a couple others, but those, job change and moving, those are 2 big ones, very stressful periods, lots of change. And if you don't understand that's what you're actually asking these people to do, they're not going to move forward. They're going to drop out if they don't think you actually care about, who they are and their career goals. If they think you're just there to fill a job for the company and you're not there for both entities in this equation, the people and the company, oh, it's going to fail. And even at the company, you're trying to solve a problem for the hiring manager and all the members of that person's team.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I teach people how to write job postings, the very first thing I do is I tell them about one of the most significant job post and job search moments of my life. And I tell them about losing my job 3 days before I bought a house. And so you mentioned all those big life changes, right? Mm-hmm. This is kind of hitting all of them at once. And I remember I get the phone call, you're closing on Friday, right? Best day. Woo, it's happening. And then within 2 hours, I was laid off. Then I opened up the internet and I typed in a job title and I hit enter. And you know what I was met with? Lies, cliches, a bunch of people who clearly weren't thinking about anyone on the other side. And the thing that I say that kind of rattles people is I go, I'm not special, and they're like, what? You're not special? And I'm like, no, I don't mean like I'm not special. Like my mom doesn't think I'm special. I mean, I'm not special as in every single person on the other side of this search has a big, deep want. There's something happening in their life and they're willing to change everything to go and change their job. So what are you going to do? Yeah. Are you going to meet them with lies and cliches? Are you going to call them highly collaborative team players to join our rock stars, to join the, you know what I mean? Like, are we going to do that to somebody, or are we going to treat them like someone we care about who's changing everything?
Applicants sadly get, there's a lot of crap that happens to applicants. And so when you post a job and you're not aware that there are going to be people that that are reaching, for a promotion, essentially, they want people that want to, say the hiring manager wants a person that makes a lateral move. But as a recruiter, you've got to read between the lines. You have to look at the resumes. You got to understand, why is this person applying? Do they just want to work at the company? Are they, what's going on? But what happens is, if the recruiter goes, okay, this person has all the right experience, except they haven't quite done X, Y, Z yet. Well, going to the hiring manager and asking, are you willing to, where are you willing to let someone reach for this job? And a lot of times, and this is where I can pivot to kind of something the reason why I've reached out to you in the first place. That person at the lateral move is very likely not diverse, because especially at like the director level, VP level, the amount of diverse candidates is not as good. But that next level, in the last 5-6 years, we've done a really good job of being more inclusive in our hiring practices. So in the next 5 years, we're going to see the director, VP, and the C-suite becoming more and more diverse. So asking, a hiring manager might say, I want a diverse candidate for this role. Let's get all the applicants in. You might have an applicant that is ready to go, ready to for the challenge. You've got to be able to understand that from a resume, and then give that person the opportunity to essentially pitch themselves for that role. And that's how we kind of have to get be more inclusive, is also making sure that we're inclusive of the people that aren't quite right.
Yeah.
Yet.
And thinking outside of the standardization of experiences, right? That's one of the filters that I really think about when I write job postings, is the two sides of the equation. I mentioned that was kind of my background the whole time. I didn't know I was preparing for this, but I totally was, because I'm sitting down with hiring managers and I ask in a few different ways, what experiences has this person had that would prepare them for this role? And what it does is it opens up a lot of doors, because instead of saying, and we were just talking about this before we hit record today, this idea that my marketing manager didn't have a traditional marketing background, right? When we open it to experiences, then we open the door to people from all backgrounds, from all experience levels, areas, etc. So they can say, yes, I've done this. Yes, I want to do more of it. And that's a really powerful moment, but also being able to forecast in 6 months what's going to be happening that's not happening right now.
Yes.
And when that person describes, I'm doing all this right now, and you hear the answer the manager gave you, so hiring starts to feel like finding your keys instead of going to the used car lot, right? And for the candidate who's reading it going, that's exactly what I want to do. And the manager who says, that's exactly what I want done. High five, we have winners. And I pray we also have that moment where managers don't go, could I just see 2 more? Because that we all hate that moment.
Yeah, the Seymour disease.
Yes.
But the thing is, that's where the empathetic recruiter really comes into play, because you got to be able to understand the hiring manager's needs, the candidate's needs, the applicant's needs, passive candidates' needs, in order to make sure that everyone's having a good experience, that everyone's getting a fair shake at the target. But also at the same time, if you think about looking through 100 applicants, recruiters often, just skim the resume. And yes, it's because they're usually over, they've got 40 recs. They don't have any other support. They've got everyone breathing down their necks. And so they typically take, what they think is the path of least resistance, which is, skim through the resumes, not take the time. But oftentimes you're skimming over the candidates that will get hired, and you can ultimately save yourself a lot of time. If you're writing a good job description, the applicants are going to be much more relevant. And so really take the time to understand what they're doing. They may not use the same terminology, but if you put your mental thesaurus on and your empathetic thesaurus, that's a new term. Let's coin that. Your empathetic thesaurus, and understanding the person's experiences and skills and goals, they may use different words. And if you're just looking for the words that your hiring manager gave you, you're going to miss so many great people.
1000%. Because if we feel, I meet a lot of recruiters every single day, and so many of them, when I ask, do you know how to write a job posting? They go, absolutely not. And then I ask, who owns the job posting? They're like, the hiring manager. And I'm like, if you're confused, how do you think they feel?
Yeah, it's very rare to have a hiring manager that truly understands, recruiting. There are some great ones out there. There are some great ones out there. And also another thing that we've done is we do a lot of knowledge sharing. And so our system, you can actually use other people's templates, for outreach and stuff like that. And what's interesting is the people whose outreach that people are using the most are the empathetic people. And it's you hear with the donut, you've got your intro, then why I'm reaching out, that changes. And then you've got your closing and call to action. These people have 20 donuts all in one. It's like, what's it say here in their LinkedIn profile? What's it say here in their resume? What about this? What about that? And so there's fill in the blanks. And before you know it, nobody needs the template anymore, because they now understand the algorithm, which is which is customize, personalize, create a great experience. And you're going to actually do less work ultimately.
Well, I think there's almost an element of belonging, and you're giving a little preview into what belonging at that company could be,
Yep.
right? When someone notices who you are and is noticing details and adapting their communication to you from day one, that probably sends a little bit of a different message than we're now looking for highly skilled coders to join our team.
Yeah. Well, the belonging, that's a phenomenal way to segue to why I reached out. So Kat, I saw that you had released an ebook and you said that 69,000 people were now going to get to experience this book to change things. Walk me through how that made you. Well, first, what give me more detail about what happened and how it came to be, and then we'll move through why I wanted to talk.
Absolutely. So small world, one of my college friends is now the head of training at a very, very large global distributor and has learned about pronouns and belonging from me.
Mm-hmm.
We've been friends for a really long time, and he had to learn how to refer to me, how to ask me questions. And we've been on a bit of a journey ourselves as friends, as people who have cared about each other. I would say even to the level of family. We've been friends for 18 years, and now as the leader of this training company, we jokingly say he has a gay job and a day job. And so while he is also the head of training, he's also leading the ERG at this massive company.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, I really love what you're doing. Let's talk through it. I read your book. And so he read the book, and we're thinking about, and they were thinking about how to make Pride something that actually changed their company every month, not just a speaker series in June. And I was really excited, obviously. And so we're going through a few of the options. And one of the options that he came up with as a trainer was taking my book and turning it into a hiring manager onboarding module. That actually means that every single manager and actually every person who joins this company will not only have onboarding on how to do their payroll and benefits, but also about how to refer to each other, about pronouns and active allyship as a member of this organization forever and ever. And that kind of makes me want to cry and gives me all the feels, because I've seen both through my interaction one-on-one, but also in presenting this topic to a lot of companies
Mm-hmm.
worldwide. I'm watching how it doesn't just change what happens in the four walls. It changes how we connect with our families and our friends too.
Yeah, the downstream connections. It's you've gotten these hiring managers who may or may not have ever understood why it's important. It might have been dismissive of it for whatever reason. But to understand, but to now actually have a book and have it be part of the curriculum to being a hiring manager, giving them the understanding, the context of why it's important. Would you want me to misuse your pronouns? Would you want me to not care about who you are as a person enough to use they, them instead of, he, him, or she, her? And for them to understand that and why that's important. And it's also the ability to connect with that, potential employee or potential customer or a sibling or a nephew or a niece who's come out to, help them now understand why it's important.
Exactly. Well, and it's so powerful to complete this education in our homes too, right? Think about the scale and scope of this. This is not, 69,000 people that sit in one building. These people sit in over 25 locations around the world, and they often also sit in their homes. And what I've heard over and over again is they complete training in their home without headphones, as many of us do, right?
Yeah.
And that kid overhears the training. That sibling, that other person in your home hears you doing the training and starts a conversation, or is vice versa. Just last week, I was at a conference where an HR manager saw my presentation about pronouns and asked me, I really wanted to talk to my sibling about this, but I didn't know the language to use.
Mhm.
Right. And we were able to instantly translate this conversation into something that can start a conversation between two people who maybe haven't been able to have a real conversation for a really long time.
Yeah, helping people understand the context, it's so hard.
It is.
How do you address that in the book? The context and the understanding.
I always present my personal stories. And I think that's probably what makes me a little different from most people is that I am real through and through. And my fundamental belief on this is that this is not about PC culture. This is not something that's new. What this is really truly about is making other people feel safe. And at work, you will never be your best if you do not feel safe, period. In your life, you will never be your best if you do not feel safe. And when I present this, the very first exercise we do, I show an old Chevy, a 1971 Chevy truck, the truck I will own someday, because that truck, my granddad owned that truck. And he was not what you picture when you think of allyship, but he's everything I imagine when I think about feeling safe.
Yeah.
I ask every single person in that room to tell me the name of the first person that ever made them feel safe and to remind them that we are paying forward that love. This is not about some like movement. This is truly about giving other people the love that we were given that helped us thrive in the first place.
It's about being your authentic self.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of our core. That's our core one of our core values is being your authentic self. And if you are not, if you don't, if we tell people, if you don't feel like you can be your authentic self, say something, tell us.
Well, the thing that we don't often remember is that knowing who you are is a superpower, but superpowers are disruptive. So if you're a
Yes.
Marvel fan, if you're any kind of superhero fan, you know that superheroes do not travel without creating some disruption. I mean, Superman flies through. What happens to all the windows? They break. The Hulk goes into action. The shirt rips, right? There's tension around people who know who they are, who
Yeah.
fully and authentically live who they are. And so we have to remember that that's going to cause some friction on the other side. And as HR and recruiting professionals, we have an incredible opportunity to build a bridge that helps people feel less friction between how we did something and how we will do it because the fundamental value is the same.
Yeah. And yeah, what's also interesting about Marvel, all of the characters have flaws. Like the alter egos all have flaws.
Yeah.
And but the thing is they're all still part of a team.
Yep.
And yeah, they may not get along all the time, like the Avengers, they have their little civil war. It's nerd out. But no,
Exactly.
but I understand that aspects of it. So before we're getting close to time, but I want to close with, why is it important? Why is it important to focus on the connections? Why is it important to focus? And it's all probably interconnected. Why is it important to focus on, that inclusivity? And part of it, can start with as simple as someone's pronouns. What is the why is this why is this ultimately important, and why have you made it your life's mission?
Yeah. Because I believe fundamentally, and I believe this, that we all have this opportunity, is that we get to crack the door a little bit for someone else every single day. And that door, we can call it a ceiling, a door, whatever, but I fundamentally believe that every single day when I stand in front of a ton of people looking like I do, saying the things that I can say proudly because I am safe. I can't get fired by my boss. I am the boss, right? All of those experiences allow me to make room for other people to stand in my spot and
Mhm.
to make room for them to be standing in front of everyone without having to soften who they are or pretend just to succeed, which I spent a lot of my career doing.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And on my side, as a leader of hundreds of people, I have a lot of responsibility, and I want to make sure that they all feel supported. And if I make a mistake, I will acknowledge that mistake. We recently had one of a member of our team. They were always he, and every once in a while I would make a gendered comment, and I would immediately pause, stop, and apologize, and they understood. It's going to take a minute for me to get the he him out of my system, because for 5 years that's how I'd known them.
Well, and historically, right, we're socialized from the day that we're born on these binary genders. Most people are straight out of the gate. We're getting blue things, pink things, whatever needs to happen. Hell, while people are still in the belly, they're gendering them.
Yes.
So, right, I always say, like, I'm not expecting anyone to figure this out overnight, considering, you know, you've had
Correct.
years of indoctrination up to this point.
And my hope is that, you know, that they were understanding. And they were. I even had a conversation. I said, I apologize now. It's going to take a minute, but I want you to know, I want you to know, I'm going to make an absolute effort to be right every time. So it's it's less and less now, because I've gotten used to it, got it out of my system. 5 years is a long time. That's the other part, is it when an organization makes a mistake, or a hiring manager makes a mistake, or says something that makes somebody uncomfortable. I think acknowledging it, especially if somebody doesn't use the proper pronouns, but acknowledging it later, or actually giving the employee the ability to feel safe in correcting somebody, is ultimately, a good idea. How would you recommend, we'll close with this, but how would you recommend somebody, help? How would you recommend an employee who is now wants their team to acknowledge they, them, or their other non-binary, their non-binary titles?
Yeah. Well, so I tell teams, and this is more for the managers, right? Because there are more of you than there are the non-binary person on the team. And so I just say, you should ask, how should I refer to you regularly?
Mm-hmm.
How should I refer to you? And it might be, hey, call me Kat. And that's something that I've been through recently, because I was Katrina for a long time. And now I'm talking to people I've known forever and saying, hey, call me Kat, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it's just a matter of mentioning it, and also putting it into places on your content, like on your email signature, putting little explanations, providing some education that someone could take without you having to be the educator, I think, is one of my biggest pieces of advice, because sometimes you can run out of energy on this. And so, make sure you mention your pronouns every time, coach other people on how to introduce themselves, and use the phrase, please refer to me as.
Yep. And put it in your email signature. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. So I knew to call you Kat because, one, it's part of the it's how you put yourself here, but it's also how you signed your email. And so paying attention to how people refer to themselves, just being mindful of that is important. So, well, Kat, to close up here, how can people get in touch with you, and why should they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I'm very lucky. I'm the only Katrina Kibben in the world. And so if you spell my name right, you'll find me. And if you find someone else, it's a Navy priest, and you'll know you're in the wrong place. I also run a company called 3 Ears Media, and we are job post writing experts. So if you know those job postings aren't quite where you want them to be, or that creating a more diverse pipeline is a priority in the next 6 to 12 months, which I know it is everywhere, you want to give us a buzz.
Awesome. Well, Kat, thank you so much for taking the time today. I truly appreciate this, and congratulations on the ebook. Congratulations on the impact that you're having. And I'm just thankful and glad that you took the time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.